Welcome back to the Laundry List. My name's Todd Belfer. I'm your host, and welcome to another week of the Laundry List. Charles, Blake, welcome, guys. How? It seems like everyone's kind of quiet and tired today. What's going on?
I just drank some of Sariah's coffee. I hope that peps me up. I'm very excited about our guests today. One more so than another, but should make for some good stuff today.
Blake?
Yeah, I'm great. I think, everything's good. No complaints. I am a little tired. It is a little hot. I'm ready for the heat to be over and get into the fall.
We got a very, very special guest today. Our guest today is my executive assistant, who's become a very good friend, almost like a daughter to me. And we've welcomed her into the family with open arms, and I couldn't be more proud to see her and work with her every day. Sariah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, and we're very happy to have you. And before we get too deep into the podcast, we're going to have Charles, who always is so gracious, to read the laundry list.
Yep, thank you, Todd. All right, these are traits that we believe our listeners can recover from doing some things, most of them listening and checking in with this podcast on a weekly basis. And the first one is, 1, we became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. 2, we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. 3, we were frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. 4, we either became alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. 5, we live life from the viewpoint of victims and are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. 6, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. Number 7, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. Sariah, I can't wait to hear about that one with you. 8, we became addicted to excitement. 9, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and rescue. 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low sense of self-esteem. 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order to not experience that painful abandonment feeling, which we received from living with sick people who were never there for us emotionally. 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholics and took on the characteristics of that disease even though we did not pick up a drink. And finally, 14, para-alcoholics are reactors rather than actors.
Thank you, Charles. So this is a podcast about relationships with your parents, your siblings, your teachers, your friends, your romantic partner, really with everybody. It's not just romantic relationships, even though we talk a lot about that on this podcast. It's really relationships about with everybody in your life. So, Sariah, why don't you give us a little history of where'd you grow up? What was it like? Talk about some of the trauma in your childhood, and just let's focus a little bit on the childhood for a little while, and then we'll get into the adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a foster kid. I got put into foster care when I was 13 years old. And that was because my dad, he was addicted to meth. And that kind of started when I was about 10 or 11. But my dad wasn't a very good role model in my life. He was a white supremacist once he started using drugs. He was the kind of guy who would do anything for a girl, which includes moving across the country. So I did a lot of moving when I was a kid. I went to 13 different schools throughout my entire, school career, whatever. So there was a lot of moving. I never had a steady home. I did experience homelessness when I was about 11 or 12.
Where was your mom in all this?
So my mom left when I was 2. So she has borderline personality disorder, recently diagnosed. And she makes a habit of showing up into my life every 7 years. But I don't think that she could have ever handled the responsibility of having a child. I think that she wants a relationship with me, but she just can't make that commitment, and so she ends up leaving again. So she's due in about another couple of years. We'll see how that goes.
All right. And then so basically your dad raised you until you were in foster care.
Yeah, raised is a relative term. I was more of a latchkey kid. I raised myself and my brother. But yeah, once I went into foster care, then he lost custody permanently. Didn't really make the effort to get it back because he was continuously choosing the drugs over myself and my brother.
So what memories do you have from a young age of your dad choosing the drugs over you and your brother? Like what kind of memories do you have?
So he was gone a lot. When he was around, it was always with other people. He would leave me at sketchy people's homes, people that I didn't know. And I would stay there for 3 or 4 days while he's out on a bender, whatever. And then we'd go to the next place.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, it is definitely. It was scary. Thankfully, nothing bad ever happened to me as far as those people go, because they were also drug addicts. So I really did get lucky with that. I'm so sorry. What was the question again?
So what were like the memories like? Like what like not just memories, but like what were the feelings that went with like your dad just leaving for like 3 or 4 or 5 days, and you just being left with these stranger drug addict guys or girls in these sketchy places? Like what's going through your mind? What kind of feelings are you experiencing? I mean, do any of the laundry list items like speak to you on how you try to protect yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's kind of made me a people pleaser. I don't want to inconvenience someone with my existence, and when you're being left at a stranger's house, that's kind of what you're doing, especially being, 8, 9, 10 years old. Nobody wants a random kid in their house. So I think because of that, I kind of became a people pleaser. I don't want to inconvenience somebody with my existence. And so I'm just quiet. I don't object to really any criticism about me. I don't stand up for myself.
Yeah, it's too scary. You don't have a voice.
Yeah.
Because you were never given that love and nurturing that you so well deserved when you were a kid. So it's like, well, I'm just a nuisance and I'm a pain in the butt, and my dad's dropping me off here. These people don't want to, me to be here. So I'll just try to be quiet and not have a voice and not make a ruckus.
Yeah, and then, I'm also seeking approval because not only do I not want to inconvenience you, I want to make you glad that I'm here. I just want to make everything easy for them, even though they're supposed to be taking care of me because I'm 9. But, I'm a people pleaser. I would try and, keep things clean, keep things tidy, just do whatever I could to make them happy.
And how old is your brother, older or younger?
He's younger. He's 2 years younger than me.
So you would have to look out for him too?
I would, yeah. I would cook for him, as far as my cooking abilities would go. And we didn't have food, so it was really a lot of like mayonnaise sandwiches, top ramen, peanut butter. I hate peanut butter. But yeah.
Yeah, that I know. And so you guys were just going from place to place. Your dad's a meth addict, and he's out doing his thing. Mm-hmm. How do you keep it together even until you went into foster care? Because it sounds like there was no semblance of a family or a structure. Or did you go to school?
I did go to. Once he started getting really heavy into his addiction, I missed probably 3 or 4 months of school, and I think the only reason that nothing ever happened with it was so close to the end of my 7th grade year, and it went into the beginning of my 8th grade year, so it was split up into 2 separate years. But I missed several months of school in that time. But there were a lot of problems and signs, and I'm surprised that I didn't go into foster care earlier.
How'd you get into foster care? Was it voluntary, or was it, like, did he say, I need help, or did they come take you guys?
No. In a lot of these abusive situations, the parents will always try and coach their children into saying whatever they can to get CPS off their backs. So when I went into foster care, we had no power, no hot water. We were going to food banks. There was tons of domestic violence at my apartment, nonstop. Both of my dad and his girlfriend were getting arrested, and the only reason I stayed out of foster care is because they kept getting arrested separately, so there was still somebody to take care of me. But
And they were getting arrested for drugs
they were getting arrested for domestic violence.
on each other.
Yes. It was really bad. You know, there were constantly things broken. There were holes in the hallway, like things thrown everywhere. My dad's girlfriend came at me with a knife once. It was always really, really messy.
And how did you feel when that was going on in the house? Were you like hiding? Like what kind of feelings did you like experience when that was happening? Because that sounds traumatic.
It was. I think I kind of like over time became desensitized to it. There was one time that it happened that I had a friend over at my apartment. Needless to say, she wasn't allowed back there ever again. But I did have to. There were a couple of times where I did run to my friend's house and had to call the police and things like that. But there were also younger children in the house. And so a part of me was protecting them as well and trying to shield them from whatever's going on because I'm the oldest. And I was the one who was taking care of all of the children while they were doing whatever.
I mean,
they
her
were doing.
kids too?
Yeah, she had 3 kids,
All younger than you?
all younger than 5.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So I was taking care of all of them. And my brother would help me because he was closer to my age. He was 11 when this all happened.
And when she was not high on meth and drugs, did she try to become a mother to you? No?
No, she was never not high. They were always high. And they would stay up until, 4 or 5 in the morning, wake up at 2, 3 p.m. And the thing is, they don't want you to leave the house while they're asleep. And so I missed a lot of hanging out with my friends and things like that because I couldn't leave. But they stayed up all night and slept
and
all
the
day.
young kids would just hang out at the house too, just like
Yeah, and if
entertain themselves or feed themselves, or you would feed them?
I would feed them. If I did go anywhere with any friends, the kids came with me, which ruined a lot of friendships for me. But yeah, they went everywhere with me. They were my kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That reminds me a little bit of Shameless on how she took care of the whole. Did you guys ever see that show? Like
Yeah.
she took care of everybody, right? Because Frank was a mess and a drug addict and an alcoholic, and she was constantly taking care of all the kids, and it just prevented her from having like a life and a childhood experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Call me Fiona Gallagher.
Fiona Gallagher. Charles, do you want to ask Sariah some questions?
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I just learned more about you tremendously with that. I know that we're getting into how does this carry over into her relationships and adult life. And I guess my first question is, having basically been a parent as a child, did you bring that into your relationships today? Do you try to parent and cook for and clean for and tend to and mother your relationships early on after you broke free of that? I guess the first question would be, how did you break free of that? At what point did you transition from foster child to living on your own? I guess that would be the first question I'd have.
So, I mean, I got really lucky when it comes to the foster care system. I ended up being long-term fostered by my grandparents, who are great people. So I really don't think that transition into becoming an adult was all that hard because I did have a good support system towards the end of my foster care thing. But I mean, the transition was still a little hard because I didn't have much nurturing. I was raised by old people who had already raised their kids in a generation that I wasn't in. And so like that had its own challenges, but really I don't think that transitioning into adulthood was all that difficult because of my grandparents.
And they rose you. They took care of you and your brother.
Correct. Yeah.
And what happened to her 3 kids?
So her 3 kids, I'm not entirely sure. I never kept up, but I know they all went into their own homes, but they were kept together. But because we weren't blood related, we didn't get to stay with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they just went to their own homes.
Yeah, just traumatic. And I just commend you for, being present for yourself and becoming the person that you have become, because it's remarkable. And those situations typically don't end like that. Typically you see a lot of drug abuse and anger and rage and all kinds of things as a result of that type of upbringing. So I commend you on staying present for yourself and giving yourself a great life.
I do have my grandparents as well as my previous foster family to thank for that, because it definitely could have been a much worse situation. You hear stories all the time about foster children being abused, so I really was lucky, and I think that put me on the right path, because you're right, I could be another drug addict, and if I had not gone into foster care, I definitely would have been. So I can't take all the credit.
Blake, you've known Sariah the longest.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would say is, it's kind of amazing, all the things that you've gone through, and thank you for sharing those. And my one question would be, do you ever kind of regret like anything? Like, because for me, in my point in life, like I lived for a period of time with my grandmother, and looking back on it now, I wouldn't give that for the world, right? Like, I'm almost grateful that I was forced to be in that circumstance, because I learned a lot. Did you kind of almost get a different experience with your grandparents and kind of appreciate it and looking back on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, my grandma did everything to make sure that I got the life that I didn't have with my dad. So I am eternally grateful for her. And of course, there were complications because there's a big age difference there. Like I wasn't allowed to bring my phone to school. I had to set it on the charger at like 9 o'clock. But those are all superficial things. But she really helped me grow into the young adult that I am today. So I am super, super thankful for her. And I would not trade that for anything.
Yeah, and then do you think that having that upbringing, do you gravitate towards people that you can rescue, or do you, now looking at your relationships in the current day, is that kind of because you've done it your whole life and it just feels comfortable, or?
Yeah, so I've started doing this thing, and that's kind of what Charles was asking too. I absolutely do take care of people in my relationships in every aspect. My first relationship right out of high school, I was paying all of our bills. I was the only one with a car. I had 3 jobs, and I did all of the cooking and cleaning. He worked part-time. He would call off. He was lying to me, and I just accepted it. That was my best. And then, when him and I eventually broke up, I kept doing that in all of my relationships. I would take care of my boyfriend, whoever I was dating at the time, and they would let me because, like, why wouldn't they? And then I would grow to resent them for having to take care of them. So,
it's almost like the current situation, it's not real, because you're trying to heal your family of origin.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to heal your dad and his sick girlfriend, and you're trying to create a family environment that's loving and nurturing and safe. And it's almost like the current boyfriend in the situation is like not even there, because you're back when you're 4 or 5 years old trying to heal and fix that environment and that relationship. Yeah. And that's, to me, this like the craziness of this program that we do is like, wait a minute. So I'm not really seeing what's going on here in my current relationship. Like, I'm actually trying to heal my mom or my dad from being angry with me and being upset with me. So I'm trying to fix it. That's just amazing to me that occurred. When I first read that, I'm like, I don't get it. And then all of a sudden one day I read that and I'm like, wow, that is so true. I'm trying to heal my family of origins issues and problems. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with the current situation. They're just in skin suits, and I'm trying to heal it. So knowing what you know now, reading, hearing the podcast, listening to all my jargon on the phone all the time, do you have a desire to work on yourself and get better and like become the person that you've always dreamt of becoming?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I feel I just recently left my last relationship of 4 years. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was the right choice. And I think now I'm taking this time to figure out exactly what it is that I want in my relationships. And it's been a lot of trial and error, especially as of recently. But I think I want to get to a point where I'm not trying to take care of, whoever. Maybe I want somebody to take care of me. Although, I tried that and that kind of freaked me out too. So I still don't know what I want, but I think this is the time to actually focus on me and actually do some work to be better.
Yeah, I say, until you fall in love with yourself and get to know who you are, you can't share that with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I know I never really knew who I was for the longest time, up until the last few years. And I had no idea who I was, meaning like I didn't know what I enjoy in life. I didn't know what I stood for. I didn't know my values. I didn't know my ethics. And like you got to figure all that out, I think, before you share that with somebody else. So you can find some common ground, some similarities on these two people kind of match well, or these two people don't match well. Mm-hmm. And because we're so busy in the laundry list a lot of times, like we don't even know, we're just unconscious of moving forward to create an attachment to feel safe. And it's like, well, I'm creating an attachment to feel safe, but maybe I have no business being with this person and we have nothing in common. So I think it's great that you're doing the work and you're so young. What are you, 25?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I turned 26 in January. 26
in January. Yeah, you got your whole life ahead of you. And it's exciting that you're like learning about these things now and healing. Do you find that crying helps you?
Yeah. So I always tell everybody that whenever something happens to me, I need a moment to panic and cry it out. And then after that, I come up with a solution. I find that if I don't do that, it comes out in a very catastrophic way.
Like what kind of way?
I have a full mental breakdown. I stop talking to everyone for weeks. I cry a lot more. And I get into unhealthy habits. I stop eating, just stop taking care of myself altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's good that you have your cry, you learn to reparent yourself, and then you carry on. You feel the feeling, you show up for yourself, and then you move forward. So you hear us all the time talk about like the little kid that needs to be loved and nurtured, which your little kid was never loved and nurtured as you were growing up. The teenager, which tends to be reckless, angry, addicted to excitement, wanting to stir up shit, and then the adult that is kind of like the sensible, logical person. In your life, where do you see, if those three figures are living inside of you, who do you see showing up the most? I see, from where I'm sitting, I see the adult a lot. And then maybe once in a while the little kid comes out like, why can't anyone be there for me?
Right.
Why am I getting screwed?
Yeah, I tend to not externalize the little kid. That's really more just the voice in my head, but I do show up most times as an adult because I was forced to grow up really young. I was forced to take care of my family and do whatever. So I always revert to my adult self. It's all I've ever known how to be. And then I'm constantly just hearing, you're so mature for your age, you're doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. So like, I feel like I have to stay that adult because I'm seeking approval there. Like everybody's telling me how great I am as an adult. And so I have to stay an adult. I don't really have the chance to act out or whatever, revert to my childhood self.
Isn't that exhausting?
It's very exhausting, yeah. But
sometimes maybe you just want to be like silly and be a little kid, or like just like screw off a little bit. Like always having to be that image and that adult seems exhausting. It just sounds exhausting to me.
It absolutely is. And I think people have that expectation for me, or maybe they don't, and I've made that all up in my head, which is also equally possible. But I feel like there's this expectation of me, and if I divert from that, a little bit, people are going to look at me different, and I don't want people to look at me different. I've worked hard to maintain this image of perfection. Like, if I tell you my story, you'll be shocked, and I don't know. I'm an open book, and I'll tell my story to anybody who will listen, but it's not something that I'm open and on the table to strangers about. It's only if they're willing to listen and if they ask.
So with your story, and do you find yourself that do you have a hard time relating to people your age because you had to grow up so quickly and take care of your siblings and just be the adult when you were very young? Do you have a hard time finding like your peer group and your friends your age, like you have a harder time relating to and being that 25-year-old, kid?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, anytime somebody talks about their parents or issues they have with their parents or like how much they like their parents, I don't get it at all. Because I mean, I didn't have a mother figure growing up, and that was especially hard. But a lot of people have these normal childhood things. They would go to the movie theater, they had a favorite place to eat, or they had family traditions, and I didn't have any of that. So yeah, it's definitely been hard to try and relate to, I guess, normal people. And it is hard to find people like me.
That's why she gets along well with you, Todd. Non-normal person. So, Sariah, and that would only have been the case, right? To not be able to identify with people your age. Because when those people were kids, as you had said, they're out at the playground. You weren't able to go out at the playground, right? Your parents were asleep. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and then and then a bunch of kids under the age of 5 you're taking care of while they're asleep. Then when they're awake, they're high.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's abandonment going all kinds of different directions here. And certainly when kids were able to be kids, you weren't able to be one.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're dealing, it's almost like she was a child adult. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this a couple of different times where very early on the kid was raising themselves and they're suffering from the same things that we are because they were never able, they have that abandonment, right? They have that rejection. They have that, the inner child never was able to develop and flourish.
And that's why I'm so impressed that you broke off a 4 or 5 year relationship.
Yeah.
And you did it with character, with class, with love. You did it in such a professional adult manner, and I'm just so impressed because that's so hard to do. I mean, so hard to do, and stay present for yourself because you left your relationship and you had nowhere to go. You were stuck. You didn't have like this family to run back to, or these friends to give you love and affection. Like you were by yourself and you did it and you went through it. So, I commend you on that, and I'm just very proud that you showed up for yourself and you got what you wanted.
I think that the biggest reason that I was able to do that was actually because of you guys. I have a support system with you guys that I didn't have a year ago. You guys are quite literally my family. So thank you for that. Sorry, I'm crying now.
Never apologize for crying. Never apologize. That's the tears that you need.
Yeah. But I think that the reason that I was able to do it is truly because you guys were behind me all the way. So yeah, thank you.
No, and I always find it's a lot easier to become your true self and make decisions that best represent you and that you want when you have love and support around you. Yeah. And I know for me, like, I love and support you so much, and so does Alex, my wife, and so do my kids even. My kids are always asking, how's Sariah? They love you, You're part of the family. So we really appreciate it, and you put up with all of our crazy idiosyncrasies and narcissism and my dad, like, yesterday we're having breakfast with my dad. That's right. Yeah. And like, it's great to add another member to the family that we are, that we care about and just love so much. So yeah, you're on fire for your age.
Seriously.
And she didn't turn to drugs and alcohol.
Fascinating.
Or prostitution.
It was stacked against her.
I mean,
I did.
It was stacked. Okay, go ahead.
I did have an alcohol problem for a good couple of years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How old were you when that occurred?
I was 19, but there was also a lot going on there. My dad had just died. My grandfather had died. My ex-boyfriend had died. I was experiencing homelessness. I was working 3 jobs still. I think at some point it even turned to 4. But I did have a very serious drinking problem. I was partying every night. I missed several shifts because of my drinking.
So that was your way of mourning and dealing with so much loss.
Yes.
And then how'd you get out of that? How before it became just such a problem that you couldn't stop?
I think the first step in that was somebody bet me money that I couldn't go the week without drinking. And of course, I don't have an alcohol problem. So I wanted to prove him right. And, I did, thankfully. And then my roommate was like, I bet you can't go even longer without drinking. And so I had to prove her right. And I think that's part of what got me out of it. But also I met Nate, my ex-boyfriend. And he was so well put together. He was exactly what I needed in that moment. And I wanted to be better for him. And I think that was a big part of why we stayed together so long, is because while we weren't right for each other long term, we were both exactly what we needed in that moment. I think I helped him loosen up a little bit, figure out who his true self was. And he really did get me to where I am today. He got me my first office job, and I went from there. That was all me, but he helped open doors for me. And he really did make me a better person, and I am eternally grateful for him.
Yeah, it's amazing how God put people in your life at the time where you needed them. It's like you're drinking, you're drowning your sorrows and mourning the loss of all these important people in your life that passed away. And then your friends bet you, and then Nate shows up, and it's like, oh, okay, so alcohol didn't take control of your life.
Right.
And you interceded and said, nope, I'm not going to drink anymore. And I've been around you for a year now. I don't really see you ever abusing alcohol, and that's just so commendable. Because when I was your age, I was a full-blown alcoholic, just running hard at that age, and you really feel the feelings and do the work, and it's impressive. It's really impressive. So if you could say 25-year-old Sariah to 7-year-old Sariah, what would you say to that 6 or 7-year-old little girl that's just in so much trauma right now? What would you say to that little 6-year-old girl?
I think I just want to let her know that it's all worth it, and it's all super fucked up right now, and it's going to be fucked up for a really long time, but I'm in a place now where I'm actually okay. Like, I feel like in every aspect in my life, I'm on the right path. I'm doing something great. So, I mean, it's all worth it.
Yeah, because that's so important, because we have such traumatic childhoods. A lot of us have such traumatic childhoods, and then we talk about them, and it's like we don't know how to heal that little girl at 6 years old. I mean, no little girl at 6 years old should have to endure what you endured with a meth head father and a girlfriend, you raising 4 siblings, and they're out, doing drugs and sleeping all day, and there's no food in the house. You can't even go to school. You can't play. I mean, that's a prison, and that's why it's important to talk. I always say, talk to your inner child, your little girl, and tell her how much you love her and how much it's worth it, and that just stick with it, and you're going to be okay. And you're going to be okay. What do you want out of life? What do you want? I always say, write your. I'm drawing a blank on the word. When you die, you write your eulogy. There you go. Eulogy. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm only 41 years old. You write your eulogy. So I wrote my eulogy 4 years ago. And what I wanted to say, telling people, thank you for being there for me. Thank you. So I wrote my eulogy of what people said about me and what I wanted to say about myself when I died. What would your eulogy be? Fast forward 70 years from now, what do you want the world to know? This was Sariah on this earth, and this is what she did.
I think honestly, I haven't done that yet. I'm still trying to figure out, who I am, where I want to be. I never really expected to live this long.
Wow.
So I
You
mean,
thought you were going to die at a very young age?
I did. I hadn't really intended on living. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was suicidal, but
Did you? I mean, I've thought about suicide. I mean, did you think about suicide when you were really young or teenager or?
yeah. I had like an emo phase when I was like 12 or 13, back before things got like super, super, super hard. And it just kept getting worse. So yeah, I mean, I was definitely suicidal when I was a teenager. I was reckless. I did some really sketchy things as far as like, 17-year-old party girl goes. I was careless with myself.
It's almost like you'll do reckless, crazy things, not caring if the result is death.
Yes.
But not trying to kill yourself purposely. It's like, I'll do all this crazy shit, and if it so happens I die, well, maybe that's a relief because I'm in such pain.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Oh, Todd, for me, there was so many people around me that actually did die young. I truly believe that was going to be the outcome where I was going to be. When you see people that you grew up with close to you, and you just explained that there was 3 different losses that you had experienced by the time of 18, right? What was it? Boyfriend?
Dad and grandfather.
Dad and grandfather. It's just like, okay, this is my course. This is what's going to happen to me soon. See, especially young people around you. And then in and out of the foster care, everything has a shorter expiration date on it, right? There's no stable.
Right.
There's no steady. So I can identify with that. I for sure thought I wasn't going to live past 25. That's when my sister passed, my aunt passed young, a couple cousins passed young, and that was it would have been fascinating to me to see someone go beyond that. Of course, the parents and the grandparents are, but I can identify with that, Sariah.
Yeah.
I don't know what an emo face is, though. Do you know, Todd?
Oh yeah, my kids had a phase. They were into that stuff.
That's coming for mine, I guess, then, because they're too young for that.
So, it's interesting that one of the things we talk about in our recovery journey is we learn to play and have fun in life and not take ourselves so seriously and not be the perfectionist anymore. So it's like you can let go of that parental hat, of that hat that you need to like take care of these 4 kids in the house, that you need to be the responsible. Like sometimes we just need to let loose and play and be silly and just have fun in life.
Yeah.
And I'm just learning how to do that in my 50s. Charles is just learning how to do that. Like we're so used to like having to like do all these things for like either validation or for
approval,
money or approval. And it's like, sometimes we just need to be silly. So what I've been doing lately is like when no one's home in my house, I'll go like bang on my drums for an hour and loud. And, I'm an amateur drum player. I'm not really good, but I love it. And then I'll go crank the guitar out. And then I'll go take Gigi.
Any vocals? Do you belt
No
out vocals?
No
You don't belt
vocals.
anything out?
No.
Come on, Belfer.
Just guitar and drums, no vocals. And then I'll just take Gigi in my arms and crank some music and we'll dance. Her and I will just dance. And I got to tell you, after an hour of that shit, I feel alive.
Yeah.
So what do you do to be a kid again and to be like fun and silly and like that brings your spirit alive?
I think I'm a way more calm person than you are, but I live alone now, which is really good for me. I think long term, because the only person I have to focus on is me. But when I was a kid, the thing that made me happiest was painting and drawing, and that's kind of what I've dedicated myself to. Is I took up painting. Just as a release. So yesterday I just wasn't having a good day, and so I went home and I started painting, and now I've got this whole big project that's taking up my whole living room, but it makes me really happy and I feel at peace.
Well, I would encourage you to continue to dive into that and see where that takes you. I know I have other friends that do that, and they just like it. They say it just awakens their soul, and they feel like connected to themselves when they do that, and that's great. I've seen some of your artwork, and it's amazing, and I hope you continue doing that. Anything else that I know we've been boxing a little bit, and does that bring up anything when you do that? And how do you feel when you're done with something like that?
So I've never been like the exercise type. I'm very, very lazy. So I mean, the boxing has been really, really good for me, and I've been feeling really good after that. I've been feeling refreshed, and I think that's part of the work that I'm doing on myself is, I'm spending that time alone without people, because I know me being a people pleaser, I'm gonna please them until I hate them, and I've.
That's true. You say yes, 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 and then you want to stab them.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Because you're lying the whole time.
That's exactly right.
And then, I've started taking boxing because I need to take the steps to be healthier, so that I don't express my disdain in unhealthy ways. Like the drinking and the not eating and the isolating myself. I think that exercising has been a really good release for me.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I can't imagine what life would be for me if I didn't get that dopamine rush and that chemical rush I get with working out. I get depressed. Like I think I'm more naturally depressive, but when I work out, it definitely awakens me, and I feel happy. I feel good. So, what else would you share with other listeners out there that are struggling with childhood trauma and trying to figure out like who they want to be and what they want to do in their life? And like, I have two kids, and 21, 23, and they're struggling to figure out who they want to be and what they want to do in their life. And I just always encourage them, don't rush it. Don't rush life. Like, enjoy the moments that go by. Like, you hear the parents or the grandparents like, you need to go to school, you need to get a job, you need to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, sometimes when you're 21 or 23 or 25, like, you just want to like have fun and play in the sandbox for a little bit and not have all these responsibilities, because you have a lot of responsibilities. You pay all your own bills. You have a full-time job. You just got out of a serious relationship. Like, you have a lot of responsibilities that you show up for. So what advice would you give listeners that are really struggling and stuck in sort of that childhood trauma?
Your parents are right. Like you said, don't rush being an adult. I've found that anytime I've rushed into being an adult, my grandma was 100% right every single time. She wanted all of these experiences for me. Like, she wanted me to live in a dorm room, which I would never do that because that sounds terrible. But she's always been spot on with every, personal relationship issue I've ever had. I don't listen to her, never do, because, as a kid, you don't ever listen to your parents. And she ended up being right every single time. So, I mean, I guess my advice would be, don't rush being an adult. And it's easier said than done. But you'll look back on all of these experiences that you missed because you were trying to be grown up. And I mean, it's sad. It really is sad.
Right. Yeah, I see a lot of these kids that are so pressured by their parents in academics and sports. And it's like, I can't imagine the anxiety and the fear that these kids are feeling. And it's like, they don't know how to have fun and just have joy. And when you ask these kids, like, what do you do for fun? They're like, well, I'm in music and I am in soccer or whatever. And it's like, those are things they do, but how do you have fun?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think they know. And there's so much pressure from their parents to like do all these things. So what are some of your goals for the next year in your life that you want to kind of work on?
I think I'm not dating or trying not to date. That has been a big thing for me because I'm really on a journey of self-discovery. And I don't think I've ever done that before. Every time I've, been single, I tell myself that I'm working on myself, but really I'm just sleeping around. So I think this time it's very important for me to figure out exactly who I am, exactly what I want in a person, if I want a person. Because right now I'm kind of just feeling like I really like being alone. I really like
You're
my
falling in
personal
love with
space.
yourself.
I am.
You're okay with you.
Yes. I'm going to start going to therapy. I've never been to therapy in my life, and realistically, I should. So I think that actually facing everything that I've been through for the first time ever is going to be a really good thing for me.
I agree.
And I'm just on a journey to better myself. Maybe eventually I'll stop eating like a frat boy.
Well, I'm jealous because you can eat like a frat boy and look like you look. And when I eat like a frat boy, I'm like Fat Albert, you know? So it's like, I'm just, you know.
It's not feeling so great.
Hey, you said something that was really cool, and lucky you to be doing this at 25. And for those listening in as well, if you haven't experienced it, it is something that is magical, which is being alone. I wasn't alone in my life until age 42. There was always someone there. And I have fallen in love with, started the process of beginning to love myself, falling in love with myself. What an amazing journey that has been impossible for me to discover or explore while I'm in the type of relationships I was in, which is that constant do for her
Anxiety.
Yeah, and the anxiety and always putting out a fire or creating a fire. So lucky you to be able to say right here and offer our listeners the advice of I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be alone. The hardest thing about being alone was I was terrified of it, and the only way that you can actually get good at it is just by being alone. There's no other way to do it, and it took me some time to finally get comfortable with it. But I actually have no qualms or problems with it at all now.
You're an extrovert. I find that people that are alone in self-discovery, if they're introverts, and I know a few of them, if they're trying to find themselves and they're introverts and they're naturally shy, it could turn into isolation and depression. Where when I'm alone, because I'm an extrovert, it tends to be solitude and self-discovery. So like for me, it's the music. It's like dancing, cold plunging, journaling. I've been journaling a lot. So like when I'm in solitude and self-discovery, I think I'm productive, but I know other people that say they're going to go there and they watch 24 hours of Netflix straight, right? And then they get depressed, and then they're ordering fast food on Uber Eats or Grubhub, and then they feel worse like 4 days later.
Well, it was like me early on because I didn't know what I actually wanted to do. Right, all of the activities where she picked a place, she picked the time, she picked what I wore, where we went.
You had no idea who you were.
No identity.
What you liked.
What I liked. So that required a little bit of discovery, and of course, it started with a little bit of that, isolation, feeling depressed, watching South Park for from season 1 to season 21. But then ultimately, we find out what we like and start doing it, and then.
So what are some of the things that you like that you've discovered in the last couple of years?
Well, I'm sitting here right now. Look, the best way to have not to ensure I wasn't going to be there was to invite me, right? And I just never wanted.
Yeah, you never showed up before when you were in a relationship, and now you show
forget
up.
It. There wasn't even a chance to invite me when I was in a relationship, and then even if I was alone and I got invited, and the other thing too, I was always the first one to leave. It was never really uncomfortable. Now I'm just being present in the things that I'm called upon or invited to do, which I'm enjoying.
Your word means something now, where your word didn't mean anything.
Nothing.
In the 4 agreements by Ruiz, he's my favorite agreement is that you're true to your word. If you say you're going to be there, be there. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Because for me, the amount of self-criticism and shame and guilt I feel by not doing something is worse than just saying, I can't make that. I'm sorry. I can't do that. Like I invited you to boxing yesterday and you said you had to do something. I didn't care. But it's amazing how we tell ourselves, I got to do that. If I don't do that, person's going to be mad.
Yep.
Right.
And now I start saying no, and I feel better about myself by saying no.
Yeah,
And
learning to say no has been one of the hardest but the most satisfying things.
For people
that I've
pleasers,
ever learned
it's
to do.
so hard. But once you do it enough, it's like, wow, I actually feel empowered. I feel good.
Yeah, you have a voice.
Because you're telling the truth.
Yes.
You're telling the truth.
You're not putting yourself aside for somebody else. And
Right.
that is so refreshing.
Or
and
even
so important.
Yeah, even if you have nothing to do. It's like somebody invited me to play golf a couple weeks ago, and I'm not a huge golfer. And I'm like, who's playing? And they told me who's playing. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to play. And they were like taken back. But I got to tell you, it was like so refreshing for me not to like people please and not to like say, oh, I'll play. Because now I do things that I want to do in my life. And I know we're coming up on the half hour here.
No, we're coming up on the hour, Todd. This has been our longest, best guest to date.
Wow.
And what's great is I'm certain we have young listeners out there that can identify exactly what she was talking about. And I certainly have an even more so of appreciation for you. I mean, we already know the girl has one of the most prestigious jobs in the country, right? We know that, and we know the demands of that job.
Yeah, the demands are rigorous and
Neurotic.
Yeah, very neurotic. I mean, if she showed you the text I send her text at 10 at night, oh, did we do this? Did we do that? Like, I'm so neurotic and I can't just write this stuff down and talk to her about it in the morning.
Why am I going to New York?
That was one of my dementia ones. Like, why am I going to New York?
That was a question you asked her.
Yeah. And she told me, I'm like, oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. So thank God you are with me, and you're a godsend. You make my life so unbelievably great. I love you. Thanks for being in my life. And, I think we're making each other better people.
I think we definitely are.
So thank you for everything.
Wow.
Thank you for coming on. And we're going to have you back on in 6 months and check in with you and seeing how your life's progressing.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 months of therapy. It's got to do something, right?
No question. Charles, anything else before we
No, I
end?
thoroughly enjoyed that. Can't wait to have you back on.
All right. Guys, we'll see you next week on the laundry list. Have a great week.